written production of the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated and is intended for the sole purpose of informing our Recreation Center members. Any duplication, copying, transmission, broadcast, or use, including electronic and social media, is strictly prohibited without the prior written consent from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated. Thank you for watching.
Well, I'm getting there. Okay. Go ahead and call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to our board meeting today. I'm Sue Wilson, President of the 2021 Board of Directors. During this meeting, we request that everyone please turn off their cell phones or put them in vibrate mode. Please remember that face masks are required at this meeting. Effective January 2017, we started taping our board meetings, and by entering this room and/or participating in the meeting, you are hereby granting permission to the RCSC to record and use on video and audio tape your image, likeness, and voice. You are also waiving any claims you may have against the RCSC for using your image, likeness, and voice in connection with the video and audio taping of this meeting and broadcast and/or publication of such meeting for any purpose of the RCSC. In accordance with our corporate documents, a board meeting is generally held the second Monday and the last Thursday of each month, with the exception of July and August, when there are no board meetings. Before we begin the business at hand, I'd like to introduce you to your board of directors and our management personnel. To my right, Treasurer Sheila Rooney. Good morning. Director Steve Collins.
Good morning, everyone.
Director Karen McAdam.
Good morning.
Director Rich Hofer.
Good morning.
And to my left, Vice President Mike Egge.
Good morning.
Secretary Dale Lair.
Good morning.
Director Darla Akins.
Good morning.
Director Dan Schroeder.
Good morning.
And Marcia Johnson, our Corporate Executive Coordinator.
Good morning.
In our management, Jan Eck, General Manager. Bill Cook, Director of Finance. Mike Whipperud, Director of Buildings and Infrastructure. Chris Herring, Director of Operations. Brian Duthu, Director of Golf and Grounds. And Jolynn Higgins, our Communications and RCSC Marketing Coordinator. I also want to recognize Alan Kleinhans and Jim Moore, audio visual technicians, and who operate all the video at this and other events, and Mike Dvorak on the video camera up in the booth. All right, Secretary Lair, do we have a board quorum?
Madam President, we have a quorum.
All right, approval of the agenda. I need a motion.
So move.
Director Akins,
Second.
seconded by Director Hofer. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay, motion to approve. Approval of minutes from the February 25th, 2021 meeting.
Madam President, I so move.
Okay. So Secretary Lair,
I second.
seconded by Treasurer Rooney. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those who approve say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay. Motion is approved. Marcia, has anyone signed up to speak regarding any motions on the agenda today?
Yes, Madam President. Patrick Gannon.
Okay, at this time, when you approach the microphone, we ask that you state your name and member number. Each speaker will have 3 minutes for comments as indicated by the light on the stage.
My name is Patrick Gannon, and I am member number 150056. I'm speaking today regarding the motion to amend the RCSC bylaws, Article 5, Section 5, Meetings of the Board, that had its first hearing at the February 25th, 2021 meeting of the Board of Directors. At about the 15th minute of the video recording of the February 25th board meeting, Mr. Hoffer made a motion for an amendment to change the wording of Board Policy 5, second paragraph, from the current language, all meetings, to all regular and special meetings, adding 3 words at the beginning of the first sentence of the second paragraph. Board member Dale Lair was then recognized by Chair Sue Wilson. Ms. Lair voiced strong opposition to the proposed amendment, stating that this seemingly harmless amendment was in fact a thinly disguised move to give the board power to hold meetings, discussions of the board in private and thus out of the view of the RCSC members. The strength of the RCSC board and management having open and candid discussions of the pros and cons of any issue is that it reassures the membership that important issues are well vetted. And the members would know that because the discussions would take place in the board meetings where all the members can listen to the discussion if they choose to. My wife and I are concerned that the proposed amendment would diminish the members' trust in the RCSC board and in the RCSC management. That trust would be a terrible thing to lose. We fully expect that on many issues there will be and ought to be differing opinions raised and argued back and forth by board members and management. That's simply the part of the board. That's simply part of the job of both the board members and management. The RCSC members experiencing the transparency of leadership in action is critical for healthy governance and critical for maintaining the confidence of the members in the processes and decisions of the board. I urge all the board members to please vote no on this amendment. Finally, we want to thank the board members who volunteer their time to serve on the board. We want to thank the management who diligently operationalize the decisions of the board. Thank you.
Dorothy Paraday.
Good morning, Madam President, Board of Directors. My name is Dorothy Paradis, 113284. I too am questioning the reasoning for why we're recommending a change, because I thought all of these open meetings and video recorded meetings was quite clear in the current bylaws as they stand. This is a question for Director Hoffer, if I may, or anybody else. What is the reasoning for the requested change and for this motion? I don't understand why.
Madam President, may I?
Yes.
Thank you. Dottie, what we're doing is defining what a meeting is. A meeting, according to Robert's Rules of Order, we currently don't define all of our meetings. We have defined executive session, we have defined the annual meeting, but we have not defined the other 2 areas in which a meeting can occur, which is a board meeting and a special meeting called by the president or 3 board members in writing 72 hours in advance. Those are the only 4 places where you can call it a meeting, because a meeting is to transact business. We transact business by voting, and those are the only 4 places you can actually vote. So if the board decides to get together beyond those 4 areas, no business can legally be transacted. Therefore, it is not defined as a meeting. To answer your question, why are we doing, well, we're trying to get more congruent with Robert's Rules of Order, which we're bound to follow by our bylaws. It's in the same area as what I'm looking at here, I think a paragraph or two up. But beyond that, what it does is it defines when a board can get together as a meeting and when it can't, okay? None of the issues that currently come up, and I think I used the USGA tour at the last board meeting. I think I used the board tour where the board goes on and visits all the properties we own, which is coming up at the end of this month as one. You have a quorum, but we're not under Title 33, so it doesn't qualify for a meeting. We're not transacting business, so it also does not qualify for a meeting. Now, Secretary Lair brought up work sessions. Work sessions have never been illegal. You've always been able to have work sessions. There's nothing anywhere in our corporate documents that say you can't do that because it does not qualify for a meeting. You're not transacting business there. Does that make sense?
It makes some sense. I have reservations as the last speaker spoke. I thought the way it's phrased right now, that all of the meetings, if I read the bylaws correctly, are videotaped and open. Some are not open for members to speak at, but they are open
One is not.
for observation. And that is the executive meeting, am I correct?
Well, actually, two are not. You're right. Members are not allowed in executive meetings, first of all, but they have to fit a very narrow area. Okay, there's only 4 things you can discuss in an executive meeting. And the other thing that you need to realize is you're using the word meeting. And I can give you the Robert's Rules of Order definition of meeting if you want, which clearly states that you have to be able to do business. What it says is, and this is, by the way, on page 73 of the 12th edition, if any of you have that, a meeting of an assembly is a single official gathering of its members in one room or area to transact business for a length of time, during which there are no cessation of proceedings and the members do not separate unless for a short recess. And that's 8.1, okay? Since we do not actually define what a meeting is, that's one of the things this does. It defines meeting as business or a regular business meeting and a special meeting. When you say all meetings, you're giving the impression that something like a work session, let's say, since that's the one that everybody's so hot about, is a meeting. It's not. It doesn't qualify there because we are not doing not transacting business.
So it's not a meeting.
Not considered a
It doesn't need to be
meeting.
stated as such.
I'm sorry?
I'm saying since it's not a meeting, and it's very clear that it's not a meeting, why do you feel the need to state it?
Because regular business meetings, regular board meetings, and special meetings have never been defined in our bylaws.
And I noticed that you didn't put in here working sessions, and that has been discussed recently that,
Working sessions is not a meeting.
I beg your pardon?
Working sessions is not a meeting.
Okay. But are working sessions open to
No,
members?
No.
no. There is nothing today. If President Wilson wanted to call for a work session this afternoon, well, probably not this afternoon since it's too late, but let's say Thursday afternoon, she could do that. It would be legal. It would be right according to Robert's Rules and our bylaws, and it would be appropriate. There's nothing that would stop her from doing it. There hasn't been anything that has been done in the last 2 years that would preclude us from having a work session in private, okay? That's not the issue here, okay? It is to define what is a meeting. And at the risk of sounding like Bill Clinton and the definition of the word let me just say that in order to define what a meeting is, because I can understand why there's a lot of people kind of worried about this thing. I get it. But to define what a meeting is also defines what a meeting isn't, okay? We have 4 meetings, possible meetings that we can do. That's it. Everything else that this board does, whether we're going out golfing, the 9 of us are going golfing, or whether we're going on a USGA tour or a board tour or having a Tuesday afternoon get-together in the office, doesn't matter. Going out to dinner, it's not a meeting if we don't transact business, and that's my point.
Correct.
So that's the reason I'm asking for this, is to define what a meeting is.
Okay, I'm going to stand on point. I understand your point.
No
but
problem.
I'm going to state at this time that I am adamantly against this change. Thank you.
Vic Hagman?
Good morning. Thank you for your service. Vic Hageman, 145711. I live in Paradise. I live in Sun City, Arizona, and it is a beautiful community. And I feel that the members, us, should all have a voice and should all be able to listen what the board is doing. And so I'm here to strongly oppose the changes of Article 4, Section 5, because it just seems like it might open the door to, some behind-the-scenes transactions of the board that are not visible to the members. And so I guess I'd like to ask a question to Representative Lehrer, because you brought the opposition to the meeting last week, in that is it possible that some behind-the-scenes transaction of the board without the visual, without us knowing, could this be a result of this change?
Yes.
And because it just seems to me that if it's a definition issue, we've been operating for, 70, 60 years now. And in your opinion, what would be the result of behind the scenes without us knowing?
You're going to lose the opportunity for debate on the stage. You're not going to hear both sides of the argument. And I'm going to tell you from previous experience, when we did have closed work sessions, there were topics that were brought up. There was a consensus vote. If the vote passed, it became an item on the agenda. If it didn't, you never heard a thing more about it. It died. So for that reason, and I gave an example last time of things that are sometimes when you don't have to stand in front of a group of people and explain what it is you want or why you oppose something, very easy for personal bias to come in. We're talking about, let's say the PIF budget, for example. That's a very good one. We're talking about multi-million-dollar projects here. And if that isn't important for the people or the members to hear the debate that goes on, I don't know what is. So for that reason, I believe the discussions, whether you agree with me, you don't agree with me, whatever, I think the discussion needs to come forward. And if not, it's the members who are in the dark. And yes, Title 10 does allow for us to have closed work sessions. We fought like hell to maintain that Title 10 designation. And that's why we moved to more open meetings. And to take this step back, just the sheer perception that we are making decisions behind closed doors is a bad decision. You talk about optics, I can't think of anything worse. So.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, so...
Time.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, time?
Excuse me.
Your time's up. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Marcia?
Julie Powell?
I'm sorry, sir, you need to sign up.
She's doing point of order.
Because I let the director speak, and so I did the same, I extended time for this one too. I did extend time. Okay.
Julie Powell?
Julie Powell, 19808, and it's been a while. Today was very appropriate. I heard on the news this morning that it's International Women's Day. Choose to challenge. So here I am. I urge a no vote on the motion, number one. I don't like the idea that I don't like the idea, can I touch it? I don't like the idea that meetings will be chosen to be video recorded. I echo the sentiments of a lot of the people that have already spoken, and I want to know where this came from. We've watched all the videos of the board meetings at home this past year because we haven't gone anywhere. And their hits are like 300 a month now on the meetings. And you can watch all the committee meetings. Member communications is not the same as marketing to prospective buyers. The website and these YouTube videos are our communication with the board of directors and management. We need to see future discussions regarding the easing the COVID restrictions, water conservation plans, Lakeview Lake repairs, committee recommendations which seem to disappear between committee meetings and here. And we members, we pay our assessments for all this money that's being spent, and we should be able to see you guys discussing how it's going to be spent. Thank you.
No one else has signed up to speak on this motion, Madam President.
Okay.
Madam President,
Yes, Director Collins?
if someone wanted to speak again, weren't they granted permission after everyone was done?
No, that's in member comments.
Oh, at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Second reading, motion 1 by Rich Hofer.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to recommend the proposed changes to bylaws, Article 5, titled Board of Directors, Section 5, titled Meetings of the Board, Paragraph 2 to read as follows: all insert the following: regular and special, reverting back, meetings of the board, excluding executive sessions, shall be open and video recorded with time allotted for members to make comments.
Need a second. Second by Director Schroeder. Discussion. Secretary Lair.
Of course. Okay, I did a lot of soul searching after the last meeting. I went back and watched the video myself several times, and I still don't feel comfortable with this motion, but I would like to bring up some points that were discussed and kind of go point by point. Anyway, the first thing, in response to Rich Hoffer, said that this all came up because members of the golf community weren't invited to the USGA tour. I've been on this, I'm working on my 4th year on the board. I've never had people from the golf community, are you talking members? Never had anybody other than board people there, or employees of the RCSC. You stated quite clearly that Title 10 doesn't necessarily mean that a quorum is a meeting, that there's a misperception. I totally agree with that. It's like maybe we should explain, you know, the misconception rather than trying to change our bylaws, which were clearly set in place secondary to the lawsuit so that we avoid a misperception of behind the scenes. We do have, and you spent some time today talking about, we have board meetings, special meetings, membership meetings, planning. They're all videotaped. The only sessions that are not videotaped are executive sessions, and that's for legal and HR issues. So this motion doesn't clear that what a meeting is. You've absolutely made it more obtuse than clear by putting this in here. Okay. You said that the motion was needed so that the general manager can talk to her employer. Well, the president and the vice president meet with the general manager at least weekly, and we do have planning sessions or planning meetings, which are videotaped, and the purpose for that is right in our bylaws that say it's to garner information from the general manager or to discuss issues. So there's your work session right there, but it's videotaped. And therein lies the problem. You talk about optics being bad when 6 or more board members are seen together. You couldn't come up with a worse scenario for optics than what's happening right here today. And you just today mentioned that, work sessions are legal under Title 10. I agree. But to move forward with a closed session, if you want to have a work session, that's fine, videotape it. That isn't the problem. You can have a work session if that's what you want, then video record it, even if members aren't allowed, so that they can see what that discussion is behind the scenes. If that's what you want, then make it clear in the bylaws. Don't come with this regular and special meetings or whatever it is that you're trying to pass here, regular and special meetings. If you want those meetings, what do you have to hide? If it's a work session, video record it. Thank you.
Madam President.
Director Hofer.
Well, it's obvious that the secretary's bought into a fear game and conspiracy theories here. What I am trying to do, and I think I've expressed this at the last meeting and this meeting, is to define what a meeting is. Unfortunately, the secretary does not realize what a meeting is and isn't. And the mere fact of the matter that there are only 4 meetings that this board can legally have is why it says what it says, regular and special. We've already defined executive session. We've already defined elsewhere in our corporate documents the member meeting or annual meeting. All we are doing here is saying, okay, the other meetings are board meetings and special meetings, period. It does not change anything that can be done today. And I'd ask the secretary, are you planning on videotaping Tuesday afternoons? You going to open up the office to members? No, you're not. You're being hypocritical about that. And the mere fact of the matter is, so the members know, we've been having work sessions going on for the last 3 years. You just haven't known about it. I've said my piece. I would call for a vote unless there are others that would like to speak.
Madam President.
Director Akins.
I'm kind of, I don't know if I want to use the word insulted, but the insinuation that we would try to do something behind closed doors, that you guys, to hide something from you really insults me. Because I'm a very extremely transparent person. And anything that we do behind closed doors is just trying to get some education and trying to educate us so that when we do come in front of you, we don't misspeak or talk like we don't know what we're doing. At the last meeting, I spoke about a subject, and then later somebody came to me and said that I misspoke, I spoke wrong. Well, if I had had a chance to discuss that with somebody ahead of time, maybe I wouldn't have said it wrong. But not having a chance to discuss things with people, I may stand up here, sit up here and say, well, she don't know what she's talking about. Well, we don't never get a chance to discuss things. I need to be educated on a lot of stuff. There's no chance to do that. We're not going to take a vote on anything. We're not going to make a major decision. We're not going to talk about spending your money, unfortunately, like she said. We're not going to talk about spending your money or take a vote on that without you knowing about it. So I just have to say, I'm very insulted that that insinuation is even out there.
Madam President,
Yes.
I'm going to go out in the weeds here a little bit. Do we need to videotape our email threads? I mean, like yesterday, there were some emails going back and forth from the general manager. I won't mention the subject because it is confidential. So do we need to make all of our emails public? I mean, we were making decisions yesterday or being asked to make decisions. I mean, how's that not construed as behind the scenes? I'm not being silly here. I'm asking the question. I mean, how are we supposed to communicate and educate ourselves and have some dialogue and some duologue about things if, we got to call Mike Dvorak in and say, hey, start the video camera because we want to have a discussion.
I'd like to comment first, and then I'll let you talk. First of all, my idea behind the work session is just to give us some education time. The board tour, the USGA tour, we have all the board members there, but we're not videotaping it. and we're not making any decisions. What I see in a work session, obviously two of the biggest things we have right now, yes, looking at the PIF, taking recommendations from long-range planning, but also looking at the past history. Being able to talk openly with our general manager who can give us the history of things. I am not, one of the things going into a work session, I do not want a consensus. Any decision-making then would be here at the board meeting. That is one of the stipulations I want to put on work sessions. The other thing is, we have a new GM that's going to be starting next year. So basically, giving that work session time, allowing us to have time to meet with our employee to discuss history, to discuss things that have happened. That's important. Can we do it in a board meeting? It's a little tough to do. That's my reason for having a work session. I do not see having a work session after every meeting like we did in the past. But I do see having one maybe even quarterly, but not very often, because most of decision-making, all decision-making, happens here. But discussion could happen elsewhere. And when it came to Tuesday afternoons, did we write motions? Yes, we did. Did we discuss issues? Yes, we did. So that was done. This opens it up. We didn't have all board members there when we did that. So some board members were left out of that. This opens it up for that. Now, Secretary Lair.
Yeah, point of order also. I think that I'm supposed to speak before you, but that's all right. I'll let it go.
Why?
Why?
No.
All right. First of all, I'm just in response, I think that with your, you're really diving down deep into the weeds. This whole thing is a deep dive. If you really feel, and this is the first time I've heard no consensus vote, because
No, it is not.
when I'm telling you what I heard is that there would be a vote taken, and I said, absolutely not, and then it was like, well, it'll be a consensus vote. I said, absolutely not, and I left. That's how it went. I'm speaking. I'm not asking for a response. The other thing that I would say is, in response to Mike Agee, no, your email should not be set forward, or nobody's asking, there's no voting going on, and everything that was sent out this weekend falls under executive session because it's all HR related. So the answer to that is absolutely not. You talk about a meeting, we've got 4 meetings. All meetings are videotaped, with the exception of executive sessions. If you want to have a work session, go for it. Video record it. What's wrong with that? What is wrong with video recording those work sessions? If nothing else, it lets the people know what the discussions are so that they can come to the meeting prepared to speak. If you do all the discussions and behind closed doors, what are you so afraid of? So I would say, if it's possible, maybe we should amend this. First of all, I don't understand why you even have it in here. It's clearly defined what the meetings are. It's all defined. Everything is defined there. What a board meeting is, what a special meeting is, what a membership meeting is, what a planning session or a planning meeting, they're all defined. We don't need to define more. You're trying to add a work session. So I don't see it.
Just a second.
But, I think if you could add a motion to this that said if you want to add work sessions, and that's, originally you shook your head and said, no, there weren't going to be work sessions. Now,
That's not what I said.
I'm speaking.
Don't misquote me.
I'm speaking. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to have work sessions. Now it's come out that there is discussion about work sessions. And that's fine. If that's what you want to say, I said that last time, then come out and say it. Don't do all this vocabulary sleight of hand and hide your intent. Secondly, again, if the work sessions are going to be recorded, I don't have an issue with it. And I don't think anybody sitting out there would have an issue with it. They would understand what was going on. They understand what the issues are. And I don't know why the members shouldn't understand what's wrong with Viewpoint Lake, what might be involved in Viewpoint Lake. Why are we hiding it? What is the problem?
What are we hiding?
Okay, I would like to comment. Yes, you did hear before, no consensus. I told you that day I talked to you. I also told you that in an email. So don't tell me that this is the first time you've heard that, because that is not true. Now, Director McAdams,
Go
you
ahead.
had a comment?
Go ahead.
Okay, so actually, I think, everybody's blood pressure is probably somewhat elevated here, but I'm actually welcoming what's happening right now because I think we are actually having a substantive debate about something important. So I would just want to say thank you to all my fellow board members for bringing divergent opinions. Being in disagreement with one another is not, doesn't mean that we're incapable of conducting business, and I really appreciate the fact that all of you as members have come prepared and you've come in order to offer your input. I think this is the meat of what I thought board meetings were going to be like, and I'm really happy to be experiencing that. I share Director Lehrer's concerns and the concerns of the 4 members who spoke. As well, I might just want to point out that all the board members received an email from a gentleman who is not in town right now, but James Thacker actually did a really nice job of explaining what he perceived to be a dangerous trend towards non-transparency. So as I'm looking at this, I see a couple of different things. One is that we're sort of squabbling about the difference between the technical definition and the colloquial definition of the word meeting. And I think that's a fair point to make. I also just want to underscore that I believe that work sessions are important, but precisely those things are the things that you as members are most desperately interested in hearing about. You want to hear this debate, you want to know what we're talking about, and we should not be afraid to have that debate in front of the public. So, Madam President, I would actually move at this point to amend this motion as follows. And I'll just give a little brief description of what's happening here. I would actually propose an amendment that removes those words regular and special because it seems to open by modifying all meetings, you're kind of all of a sudden saying, well, wait, there's going to be meetings that aren't going to be video recorded with members' presence and with input. So my proposed amendment is as follows. All meetings of the board, excluding executive sessions, shall be video recorded with time allotted for members to make comments. The only exceptions to this policy are planning sessions and special sessions as described below, and gatherings involving any number of board members for solely social, informational, or educational purposes that clearly do not have a formal meeting format and do not allow any form of decision-making or business transaction to take place.
I second.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Any other discussion? Secretary Lehr?
I think it's a good motion because I think it brings, how you define your meetings and blah, blah, blah. Everything's going to be open and transparent. And that's the crux of it. You can call it what you want, but I think that gets to the meat of it, and I think that's a really good motion.
Director Collins?
Your motion.
I also agree that we should do the amendment because then there's no doubt in anyone's mind out there, they can watch and they can see everything that we're doing.
Any other comments?
Yeah,
Director Akins?
Madam President, I'm okay with the amendment. However, I think it's a little too wordy. I don't think you really need to rewrite the whole bylaw when you're trying to explain this. But I can see where you can probably put in a couple more words that would, because I'm not sure exactly what you were saying about, but to put in there excluding workshops for educational purposes, that phrase right there, I think needs to be, because that's pretty much all we're going to be doing is trying to meet for educational purpose. So I can see including that in there.
Madam President?
Yes.
My attempt in this was to try to address the issue that we don't want to require video recording of things like the golf tour or the bus tour that the board is going to be taking. And I was just trying to accommodate that concern that might be a misunderstanding. And in order to do that, it does require a few extra words. So that is the purpose of what I'm trying to achieve, something that I think balances legitimate concerns about making colloquial meetings technical meetings. And we don't want that to happen. I don't really think it's that big of an issue, but apparently, because it's been brought up at the board as though it were such a big issue, I'd just like to accommodate that and say, okay, we're excluding that kind of a thing. But what we don't want to have happen is to have a formal meeting of the board, i.e. work sessions. Our board members, we invite you to come, we expect you to be there, and we plan to debate something. We might get some information and so forth, but there's a plan to debate. That, to me, would fall under the category of all meetings that need to be videotaped and placed on the RCSC website for, at least for member viewing and perhaps for member feedback.
Other discussion? Then I will call for a vote on the amendment. Let me get my paper out here. Would you read the amendment again?
All meetings of the board, excluding executive sessions, shall be video recorded with time allotted for members to make comments. The only exceptions to this policy are planning sessions and special sessions as described below, and gatherings involving any number of board members for solely social, informational, or educational purposes that clearly do not have a formal meeting format and do not allow for any form of decision-making or business transaction to take place.
Okay. And you had the second on that, Marcia?
I
seconded it.
Dale or I will, either one.
It was seconded by Secretary Lair. Okay.
Dale seconded.
Yes, Jan.
Madam President, Board of Directors, I just want to bring a little, maybe a thing that you want to consider before you finalize. That shall be video recorded with time allotment for members to make comments. If it would be only video recorded, it previously said open and video recorded with time allotment for members to make comments. If it was a meeting that was only video recorded and members weren't available, that's kind of a confusing portion there.
So is there a word you want to add to it? Left that open?
I'm not sure that I that I exactly understand. You're saying that you want to leave room for meetings that are video recorded but not open for attendance by the public. Is that correct?
If that was your intention, I don't know what the intention is, but if they were to be video recorded but not necessarily open for members, the following part with time allotted for members to make comments wouldn't work if they weren't open to the members. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I guess my question to the board would be, would we want these work sessions to be open to the public or simply video recorded and posted to the RCSC website?
Secretary Lair?
Thank you. I think that my concern, I understand the need to have work sessions and planning and all that. My major concern is that it's not transparent. I think that if we can video record and get it out there, people can come to the meetings. We have a format for people to comment, but we have to be able to get the information to them. It's not unlike our committee meetings now, which are video recorded. And if there's a concern, there's a forum here where people can come and say, I watched this and I have a concern. So I say video record. It doesn't have to be open to the public, and it doesn't have to have member comment. There's a forum already in place for that.
Director McAdam?
Madam President, I would suggest that because there is an amendment on the table right now, this amendment can also be amended. And if somebody would like to propose an amendment to this amendment to take into consideration what the general manager has just shared with us, I believe that that would be the procedure for us to follow.
It is. No, I'm sorry. At this time, it's strictly board. There'll be a time afterwards.
Madam President,
Yes.
would it be possible for us to table this to next meeting?
Is that what you're calling
Yes.
for?
Yes,
To table it?
yes.
Is there a second on it?
Second.
Seconded by Director Schroeder. At this time, we'll take a voice vote on that to table it. Treasurer Rooney,
Yes.
Vice President Eggy,
Yes.
Secretary Lair,
No.
Director Akins,
Yes.
Director Schroeder,
Yes.
Director Hofer,
Yes.
Director McAdam,
No.
Director Collins,
No.
and I vote yes. Motion to table. Okay. So at this time, we'll move into, there's no agenda items, so I will move to member comments.
One more, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Do we need to still vote on the original motion?
If it's
We
tabled,
just tabled the amendment. We didn't table the motion. So the motion is still viable.
I'm sorry, I was tabling the motion.
The motion and the
apologize.
amendment, or the
that
amendment
was
and
the way
motion?
I understood it.
Point of order.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I don't believe that is correct. I believe that the amendment needs to be voted on before, but it does require, the fact that the amendment gets voted on does not mean that the motion does not get voted on, but the amendment has to be voted on prior to the motion
Yes.
being voted on.
That is correct. So therefore, if we tabled the amendment, we table the
Tabling
whole
the
motion.
Correct.
Okay, at this time, moving to member comments. Marcia, has anyone signed up?
Sorry. Sue Rothring?
Okay, when you approach the microphone, we ask that you state your name and member number. While we do not have a time limit for speaking, we do ask that you are considerate of time, so everyone who wants to will have a chance to speak. If you make comments and then want to return a second time, we ask that you wait until everyone gets an opportunity to speak, and then time allowing, you can return for additional comments.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Sue Rothering, 122944. Thank you to the board for the opportunity to speak. My husband and I had sent an email to the board last Monday, March 1st, suggesting it was time to slowly lift the restrictions for guests to come in to use the swimming pools and mini golf courses comes mid-April. As we all know, things have changed very rapidly the past week. The Pfizer vaccine for age 55 to 64 age group has been available starting last Thursday, March 4th, at 3 state sites, plus at minor sites like Walgreens. This is the last of the age groups that would encompass anyone living in Sun City who would like a vaccine. Sun City is now giving out vaccines here at Sundial starting tomorrow. Anyone who lives in Sun City and actually wants the vaccine by mid-April conceivably could get both shots and be fully vaccinated. We would then have herd immunity for the bulk of the residents. I think it's safe to say that not all Sun City residents will get the vaccine. Short of the board making residents show not only their rec card, but proof of vaccine at the front desk, this is the reality of things. Prior to COVID, colds and flus have always been around, and no way can the board think the rec centers will become sterile environments. The board should not feel responsible for the residents who choose not to get the vaccine. There is an inherent risk for any Sun City resident who chooses to use the rec center, and residents understand that and accept the risk. It appears that the board was in agreement with my last statement when you moved forward and made the decision back in November of 2020 to allow for bowling. This was when the numbers were still high and it was around the holidays. This was a gutsy decision by the board, and I applaud it. I'm thinking bowling is still going on and there's been no super spreaders. Golf is no longer an exclusive position as an essential activity per Governor Ducey during COVID. State residents are now able to participate in sports like exampling wrestling and football, ice hockey played indoors. This would certainly transfer over to swimming and playing mini golf at the rec centers for guests and residents. Last Friday, after 7 weeks of falling numbers and positive trends, Governor Ducey and the state of Arizona health officials lifted the occupancy limit in bowling alleys, bars, restaurants, water parks, theaters, and gyms. Most of these are all indoors. It is my understanding that the board devised a reopening plan back in May of 2020 for COVID and the rec centers. With all that has changed and has been learned about COVID in the last 10 months, when the plan was established, I urge the board to be revisiting the plan immediately and make some common sense revisions and adjustments. We looked all over the website and could not find a reopening plan. I feel that that should be available to all residents. Sun City, with its age restrictions, will have the luxury of being the first age groups to be vaccinated. Thus, we will have herd immunity in Sun City mid-April. Common sense thinking is Sun City will be a safer place earlier with lower numbers than other Arizona locations once the 55 to 64-year-olds are vaccinated. Numbers have been dropping for the past 7 weeks. The Phoenix numbers you hear on the news do not pertain to Sun City. As you did with making a gutsy decision with allowing bowling back in November and taking a step forward with getting back to normal, it is my opinion that the rec centers of Sun City should start to reopen the rec centers for outside activities like swimming, mini golf to guests starting April 15th. Eventually, you have to start easing restrictions, and this would be a soft opening with just some outside areas while not many snowbirds here. I respectfully request the board, in light of all the new developments at the state level, to please make the motion to place on the agenda for the March 25th meeting to discuss some easing of restrictions for rec centers regarding guests. To sum it up, we will have herd immunity by mid-April for Sun City because of being a niche vaccine area with our age restrictions. And anyone who wants the vaccine will have gotten it, and they will have taken some personal responsibility to protect themselves. It is time to open up in 5 weeks for outside activities for guests and residents. The board has done a great job during COVID, and I applaud you. However, I think moving forward with what we know in vaccines, I think the board needs to stop operating as a medical board, and common sense, vaccines are available for anyone, and it's just time to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dan, do you want to comment?
Madam President, Board of Directors, I would let you know that the senior management team has been working on several proposals in the process of providing options for guests in Sun City. We are planning to present that to the Board of Directors at the next meeting. And along with that, then we've gotten Governor Ducey's no restriction requirement on occupancy on Friday. That isn't a end-all, which has been part of the difficulty with this process, is because when we started our process, we started phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and laid out how things would work in those phases. It wasn't very long into that process, and that's what originally the federal government put out, and state of Arizona said they would follow too, and it wasn't very long before phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 was gone by the wayside, and then there was this, and there was this. So, you know, we've adjusted. But in this process, our recommendation to the board has always been to follow the guidelines of the CDC and the Arizona Department of Health Services, because quite frankly, none of us are experts, and none of us know, you know, you can find such varying degrees of what someone should do to protect themselves from COVID. So we have just simply followed those guidelines regardless. And so when Governor Ducey says there's no restrictions anymore, you can have as many people as you want, if you go up to the CDC and the Arizona Department of Health Services, regardless of that, they say that you still must adhere to 6 feet physical distancing, which quite frankly turns around and creates restrictions of occupancy. So, you know, that's where our challenge comes in. So we get this, and then we still have this that has to be done, and we still should wear a mask, which doesn't mean that we are going to restrict occupancy, but it does mean that we are going to recommend that we continue to do physical distancing. So in some facilities, that may be an issue for guests, because if we are now filling those facilities with cardholders who are really who we serve, and I realize by serving the cardholders, you know, they appreciate bringing their guests, and I too have experienced that. You know, I've had company come in and we've not been able to do anything, and I have grandkids coming in for spring break and we can't do anything. But that's part of the process, that we must follow some expert advice. And so we do follow, when we make our recommendations, we being senior management, we do recommend based on what the CDC and the Arizona Department of Health Services say. With that being said, we think there is opportunity for guests in some particularly outdoor areas, because there is, our observation is there is room. We wouldn't displace a cardholder at this point, and so we will be making those recommendations for other areas that may not come yet, because we do find, for instance, our pools are pretty active in the afternoon. I don't know how we would continue to keep any kind of physical distancing if we allowed guests, and it's very important that we don't displace our cardholders. So that's kind of where it's at. You have something that will be forthcoming. We will take what action we can on Governor Ducey's process, and we will bring to you at the March 25th board meeting a presentation proposal for beginning to allow guests back into RCSC facilities.
Collins?
Ms. Eck, are you considering in your plan for clubs such as the men's club, where they play cards, if they were vaccinated, to be allowed to play cards?
The clubs have always been able to present their own proposal of what they would do. And based on that proposal, if it fits within the guidelines of the CDC and Arizona Department of Health Services, we have allowed clubs to reopen. And it is up to the clubs whether they allow guests or don't allow guests, but that should be part of their proposal.
No, I don't mean guests. This is the actual members.
No
If they were-
one, no club has been, we have not said a club could be open or not open. Clubs have always been required to present their protocols for being open, and if that protocol falls within the lines of the CDC requirements and the Arizona Department of Health Services, they've been allowed to open.
Okay, so it won't matter if they're vaccinated or not.
It's up to the clubs.
Okay.
Vice President
Ms.
Egan?
Eck? Ms. Eck? So when we...
Can I respond? Sorry, just one moment, Director Agi. If the clubs, if they have to have physical distancing, right now, CDC nor Arizona Department of Health Services has anything to do with changing physical distancing or masks based on vaccination. We will follow those same, or we will, the board obviously can make whatever decision and we will do what the board says, but we are using that as our guideline.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Eck?
Yes.
And even the other member, Sue, when you guys talk about guests, which I'm all for guests, I mean, are we going to restrict the age of those guests? Because if we're talking about people 55 and older being vaccinated, what if somebody wants to bring their 20-year-old college student in for the spring break? I mean, how do we do that?
Well, here's the thing that you may not realize is that you do not have to be 55 years old to live in Sun City. You have to be 19 or older. Just a minute. I know your question. Just a minute. You have to be 19 and older to live in Sun City, and you can, as long as you're living with someone 55 or older. And you can be, just a minute, I know your question, just a minute. And your card, and a card holder, so if a college student is living with their grandparents, which happens in Sun City quite frequently, and going to college, they can obtain a privilege card and be an RCSC card holder and use facilities now. So in response to the question about the guest, we do not have that presentation completed. So I can't tell you what we're going to present to you regarding guests, but there's not any age restriction within Sun City.
So, okay, so I didn't ask the question. I'm talking strictly from a vaccination standpoint. If you've got 20, 30-year-old people allowed to go into the rec centers, if they're not eligible to receive the vaccination, you know, from a herd immunity standpoint, yeah, we're vaccinated, but if some of the guests aren't of the age, so that was my question, was what are we, how do we address that? And I'm not being combative, I'm just kind of curious.
We have card holders right now that are 19 and 20 years old that can use the facilities right now.
Understand, but have they been vaccinated?
No, they're not eligible to be vaccinated.
So that was my question, is are we going to request or require them to? Okay, maybe I'm not asking the question right, but I just, as we start opening up to different age groups of visitors, if they have not been vaccinated, I mean, are we exposing ourselves from a risk standpoint? So that was my question.
Madam President? Okay, I think your question and what Sue's asking and what Jan's trying to, we don't have, the CDC has not come out with guidelines that have anything to do with vaccinations. They thought it was going to come out last week.
Right.
And so it's probably going to be sometime this week, the CDC will be answering those questions.
Okay.
We don't know yet.
Okay.
Exactly, exactly. And until they do, I don't have any guidelines to recommend to you because that's who our experts are for
Understand.
us.
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. McAdam?
So I might be throwing a little bit of a wrench into this right here, but hear me out. The CDC has not exactly covered itself with glory during the course of this pandemic. And while I'm not questioning the entire scope of what they do. I would just, as an example, use for you something that happened in the state of Florida. Early on, Governor Ron DeSantis made this point in an interview last week. The CDC guidelines said to him, in the state of Florida, priority for vaccination should go to the 25-year-old grocery worker who is essential before the 75-year-old that is in a long-term care facility. And Ron DeSantis looked at that and he said, okay, these are official recommendations, guidelines that are coming down from the CDC. But you know what? We have the second oldest population of any state in the United States. And my priority has to be on those elderly people who we see from the data that we get are most vulnerable. And so they made a decision not to abide by the CDC guidelines. And interestingly, although they are the second oldest state in the United States and elderly citizens are most susceptible to succumbing to this disease, they rank 27th or 28th in the nation in terms of deaths. So I guess my plea would simply to be, we can blindly say, we'll just always do what the CDC says, or we can actually ask ourselves, has the CDC maneuvered itself into a difficult political situation? For instance, the science, and I know I'm making a statement that some of you might not believe, but the science has been in consensus since June of last year that there is no outdoor transmission, regardless of whether you're 6 feet apart from one another and regardless of whether you're wearing masks. The only place where I've seen that there's a potential concern if you're outdoors is if you're less than 3 feet apart from one another and engaged in intense conversation for at least 15 minutes. So when we have people walking by each other in the lanes outside in the pool, the fact that they're within 6 feet of one another makes absolutely no difference, despite what the CDC might say. So I guess what I'm just simply asking is for us to question, can we really just simply always rely on recommendations that aren't current with what the actual science is and what we know about the transmission of the disease? The greatest danger that exists is in an enclosed area with poor ventilation. And you know what? If you're in an enclosed area with poor ventilation, it doesn't matter whether you're 6 feet separated from one another, and it doesn't matter whether you're wearing a mask, unless you happen to have a surgical mask. So I guess I'm just pleading for us to say, okay, let's look at that whole thing and consider whether outdoor activities should be treated differently than indoor activities where we have poor ventilation. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to comment that when it comes down to listening to things that affect my health, the health of my family, I'm going to listen to the scientists and the medical professions over a politician any day.
And, Madam President, I think I also appreciate the fact that I would much rather err on the side of caution as opposed to taking chances.
Okay, can I just, one last thing? The governor is the governor in the state of Florida. We're RCSC, we got to follow the rules. So if our governor says one thing, we're kind of bound to do that. We aren't independent, other than we're a private company, but we still, if they put guidelines down for us, that's what we have to follow. There's a litigation issue there for us, so we have to follow the rules.
Okay, Marcia, continuing on.
No one else has signed up to speak, Madam President.
Okay, now we will open the floor for anyone who did not sign up
He's opening the floor.
but would like to speak.
Already open.
I thought we were open. Is that what this is?
Julie Powell, 19808. I was signed up under member comments, Marcia.
Yes.
Yeah, and then I put and member comments. Maybe it was in the wrong spot.
You don't have to sign up for member comment. No.
I first wanted to thank the RCSC for allowing the space at Sundial to do this vaccine. We got ours, Jim got his in Sun City West 1 and 2, and I got my first at the Cardinal Stadium and get my second one next week, so I'll be there. I just want to kind of echo a lot of the statements that were made. I want the opening back up of the facilities to be done with a lot of caution, because guests come from all over, and we don't know what they do, where they go, what they do afterwards. And we can't displace our members, especially bowling was mentioned. The lanes are just very restrictive as far as how many people can be bowling. And so we got to do members first. That's it.
Director Collins.
Ms. Eck, one question. With the vaccinations coming up this week, are we posting that on the marquees around Sun City to tell our people to call, to give them a number?
Okay, that should be a board comment. Go ahead.
Is it okay to answer,
Yes,
Madam
go ahead.
President? Board of Directors, we are not posting it around on the marquees. The number that was put out in the email for you to share with your neighbors and the link was an early 48-hour advance process for Sun City residents only to book their vaccinations with Embry Health. Remember, we are not conducting this. We are simply providing the space, and it's Maricopa County's event that is been contracted with Embry Health to bring in the vaccinations and do the vaccinations. So that is just gone out in email, because obviously many people can drive by the signs, but it also would be something very difficult if you were driving to get all the information. You'd have to pull over to get all that information. But we've been asked just to share that within Sun City. So there'll be nothing going up on the signs. Once they open it up, then anybody throughout all of Maricopa County can come here and get their vaccinations. But they've given us a head start, if you will, to try to accommodate. The main purpose of the event was, for me, was to really be able to serve the underserved in Sun City in regard to getting their vaccination. That's the people that don't have, Jolyn just gave me a note. We will say that here on Sundial, on electronic signs, there could be traffic delays due to but we're not given the phone number or the email link. But for me, the purpose was to try to help those that either only have golf carts or have no transportation at all, that there was an easy way for them to come and get their shots. Just prior, of course, the 55 opened up, which then was a concern for me that these folks still wouldn't get there, But they don't normally provide a phone number, because if you think about it, these companies then have to answer and make those appointments. They don't normally. So they've gone out of their way to really work for Sun City residents that are underserved in getting their vaccinations.
Thank you, Jan. Okay, going back to member comments.
Hi again, Vic Hageman, 145711. This is my second board meeting. I'm a little unsure of the format, so let me just clarify what just happened as far as Article 5, Section 5. Mr. Hoffer, your original motion, and Ms. McAdams, your addition has now been tabled. Yes. And so from what I understand, what the tabling is there's going to be more discussion amongst the board, and then in the next meeting, it'll be on the agenda, and there'll be more discussion with people like us and along with you before a vote will be taken. Am I understanding that process?
Not necessarily will it be on the next time that we meet. It could be somewhere down the road where we meet, that it would be on a board agenda, yes.
Okay, so how will, how will we know that something's on the agenda?
Because the board agenda is posted a week beforehand. If you are getting your emails, you are receiving the agenda
Okay.
that way.
Thank you. Secondly, Ms. Atkins, you mentioned that you were not embarrassed, but what's the word I'm looking for? Insulted, thank you. And I'm sure that all of you up there have good intentions, that you're volunteering to be on the board. That's awesome. But, and I know for you look like a very honest person, and we as members don't intentionally want to insult you, but there are underlying situations where somebody may not be as honest or as forthright if they're on the board. So you might be honest and all that, but maybe down the road somebody who's elected to the board may not be as honest as you. So it's important that we keep these rules in line with that, so there are no hidden agendas from board members. Okay? Very good. Now, on a lighter note, we have a time capsule at Fairway Center. And I've asked multiple people, the time capsule says 1960 to 2010. And then there's another, and then I guess it was opened in 2010, and now there's another time capsule that says open in 2060. So I was 2 years old in 1960 when Sun City opened, and I would love to see the contents of the time capsule from 1960 to 2010. And I've asked numerous people where this time capsule is. In my opinion, it should be in the Sun City Museum, right there by the Oakmont Center. There should be a prominent display, and here's the time capsule, and when you walk into the museum, and it's not there. So my question to the board is, where the heck is the 1960 to 2010 time capsule?
We'll let General Manager Eck answer.
And I have pictures here if you want pictures. So because I was 2, when I was 2, I don't remember anything about 1960, and I would love to learn about 1960. Thank you.
Madam President, Board of Directors, you can go to the museum and learn a lot of cool stuff about Sun City in 1960. I was not personally involved, but my recollection is that the things that were in the time capsule for that period of time, and that's why it says both dates, are back in the time capsule with the new stuff. Okay. It remains in the time capsule. That's my understanding. I don't know that for a fact, but that's what I recall.
That doesn't make sense. To put something back in the time capsule for 100 years so that somebody can see stuff that happened in 1960? That stuff should be out of the time capsule and prominently displayed in the museum. To put it back in the time capsule for another 50 years is ridiculous.
Okay.
Thank you.
Where is the time? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, none of us were here in 2010 to make a ruling on that. And to dig it up now would be...
Yeah.
What I'm asking is that you research it.
Okay.
Can we research it?
I will.
Next. Oh. Why don't you read?
My name is Ilya Gregor, 140559. I want to make a little analogy about COVID. You know, we get vaccines, and they're 95% effective. So my analogy is, if I give you a bag of M&Ms, and I tell you 5 of them are poisoned, you know, are you going to eat out of that bag? So keep that in mind when you're talking about opening. There's a lot of variants out there that the vaccines may not cover, so let's just be careful, folks.
Any other board comments? Yes, sir.
Member.
I'm sorry, member comments. Member comments, yes.
my first time here, so is this open for new business, new
Yes.
comments?
Just state your name and your number,
Okay.
please.
My name is Richard Steiner. I'm president and instructor for the Whisper Ball Club.
Number?
Number, please.
139, 529. Sorry. The reason I'm here is I made a request to the club's office for opening the Whisper Ball Club for singles play and to allow me to instruct the participants, new participants. And at that time, I requested for 5 people being on the floor at once. But since then, I've changed my mind because of reasons you'll find during my presentation here, to 3, just myself and two players. And during this time, there would be no play per se, it would just be instruction period, demonstration period. And my request was denied. And I'm here in hopes that you will overturn it because I feel I was unjustifiably, I wasn't treated fairly, I don't think. I believe I know the reason why. I'm not positive, just mere speculation because of the conversation. I think it's mainly because if we were allowed to open for singles play, whisper ball is played on a whisper ball court, also known as a racquetball court. So if they okay us, they feel they must also okay racquetball. And I don't see that being a legitimate reason because we're both 2 different sports. We're similar, but we're different. And there's no sport that's exactly the same. And generally what defines 2 different sports is 1 or 2 major differences. It makes a decision. And that if one can't achieve the mandate of 6 feet distance, or how similar they are to another sport, doesn't matter. So what I'd like to do here, if possible, I have a packet for each one of you. You could follow my presentation. I'll make it very limited, as quickly as I can, to help you, hopefully help me to have that overturned so we could start play. Would this be possible?
You can give your
Yes.
packets
Yes. Is that okay?
to General Manager Eck.
How should I do so? Well, I'm up there or
please,
what?
give it please
Oh,
to
I'm sorry.
General Manager Eck.
They're kind of glad. Thank you.
Please go ahead and start.
Okay, while that's being distributed, the first page of that, it will be the response I received from the office and who I was make the second presentation to was Chris Herring, which is operation director, and Myrna DeBunay, or something like that. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. She's the charter club's supervisor. And that's the first page. It just basically says there, I'll read it as you do. After review, the Whisper Ball's COVID sanitation, safety and sanitation protocol, as well as in the in-person meeting with you, attended with you, Chris Herring, RCSC Operations Director, and myself, that's who Myra. It has been determined that it would not be in the best interest or well-being of the RCSC cardholders, Whisper Club members, to make any revisions to the current public guidelines for the use of whisper ball, racquetball courts. And it says, next statement, these are basically the reasons. And the first one is basically distancing. They don't believe that we can maintain 6 feet. And I demonstrated that we will 90% of the time, if not 95% of the time, maintain 8 to 10 feet to 15 feet. At no time will we be within 6 feet. I tried to demonstrate that. So we'll move on from that concern so I could establish a reason why they're not allowing that, or not, they don't think we're able to do it. To the next page. It's merely a diagram of the court itself. The court is 20 feet wide, as we say. It's 40 feet long. It's 800 square feet for only 2 people to be playing on, first off. Second off, I threw rules. All sports have rules that you have to abide by. And since it's 6 feet mandate is so important, through these rules, I only designated certain areas that the ball would legitimately be played on. Now the next page is again a diagram of the floor with some extra features to it. Of course, you see the front wall, which is at the top of the page. Next one down is the front service line. And then the A, C, and B, that's the service area. Now, the server who starts the game is in the serving box, which is A, C, or B. He or she's opponent is all the way down at the other end of the court, position called player B. Now, at this point in game, they are approximately 20, 25 feet, if not more, apart. That's well within the 6 feet mandate. Now, these A, B, and C, A, C, and B are areas which the server can serve from. Now, the server must, regardless of where they're at, the ball must either travel to either side wall. As it says here, GH is on the right wall, HD is on the right wall, and GE is on this left wall. Now, if the player A serves from position A, the ball will travel to the right wall, or the HD area. It cannot travel to GE. That's illegal. That's a foul ball. If it should travel to the center, as the pyramid shows, the triangle, towards position 2, that's a foul ball. It could only travel, if they're in area A, it could only travel towards the right corner, which is HD. Now, as an example here, if A does decide to serve from area A, and the ball travels to the right wall, A must, that's a law, that's a rule to the game. And this isn't a new rule, because this is singles play, but in doubles play, this is what they do. This is what I train players to do. And so this isn't totally a new situation I developed. I just changed it from being, instead, we can't do doubles, we'll do singles, and to maintain the distance is what we're going to do. As well as them not having to move around a lot and have to breathe hard because of the confines of the court. So anyway, A, after striking the ball, they know it's going towards the right wall. They move down to where the X is, which is along the wall of GE. And I train them, they should remain away from the wall approximately 4 or 5 feet. 4 or 5 feet is about, or is close to halfway distance to the center of the court, because the court is 20 feet wide. So 10 minus 5 is 5 feet. Now, as they hit it and they approach the X area, B is going to travel to return the ball that was served, which is going to be the right wall. So they're moving towards the right wall. So as you see, the movement of the players are in different directions, easily maintaining 6 feet, more like 10. Because if the player A is at 5 feet from 4, 5, 6 feet from the wall, they're minus, we'll say it's 6 to extend it, or even 7, that's 3 feet. Should player B, after striking the ball, they should place themselves approximately where the X is, the same distance from the wall as player A is. We'll say they're at 7 feet instead of 5 or 6. That still leaves 3 and 3, because you subtract 10 midpoint from 7 is 3, so they're maintaining 6 feet there. But through training, you learn you want to be no more than at least 5 feet from the wall. So your chances of getting the ball are high, 90% chance. Because of the move, you don't have to move much. You move here, you strike the ball. From the wall, with your arm length and the racket, you're about 4, 4.5, 5 feet. So that's how far you want to be, because if you're trying to strike the ball, you don't want to hit the wall. So, and that's where they remain, all during play. Player A will be over in this end side, player B here. There's no reason to be in the center, because that's a foul ball area. So we are constantly well in excess of 6 feet. Now, why it was rejected for that reason, if that is the reason, I don't know. Is there any questions about what I just said? Yes, ma'am.
Questions and comments. First of all, I think you did a great job in presenting this. It seems like, you've thought this through. You mentioned at the beginning that with singles play, there would be 3 on the floor, 2 players and yourself.
No, this is only for training, ma'am. This is for play. There's only 2 people during play. Correct.
Okay, so for training, where would you be?
Well, for training purposes.
Right here.
No, this isn't for play. For training, yes, I'll describe that. I just want to illustrate what I'm saying now is only for 2 people playing the game.
I get it. I think you're right on.
No, where I would be, I'd be probably up near the front wall.
Okay.
Rather than behind them, or rather be in front of them, I could see what they're doing.
Okay.
So again, I'm well in excess of 6 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Plus, it's not going to be, when I'm there's not going to be no play. It's just merely walking to positions to know where you're supposed to be and the quality of you hitting the ball.
Okay.
And they start hitting the ball, I'll probably move back rather than forward, because I don't want to be hit by the ball. Even though both soft, it won't hurt you. But it's still, good position to be in. So there's any further questions, please?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Director Akins. I'm sorry, hang on. Director Akins.
Yes, Madam President, Richard, on this paper, you said that you're requesting permission to have up to 5 people on the court. When you first started, you said you have changed it to 3 people.
Correct.
Did you submit the plan for just 3 people?
No.
Did you resubmit the plan?
As I move on, that's one of the concerns they had, was acoustics.
Oh, so then,
and that is true. The acoustics are poor, even if you don't have a mask, face mask on.
So perhaps you need to resubmit the plan for just 3 people.
Pardon me?
Perhaps you need to resubmit the plan for 3 people.
Well, 3 people is what I decided to do because of the acoustic situation. The verbal instructions would be done off court, so they can clearly hear what needs to be done. When we go back on court, we merely demonstrate what we learned off court. Very, very little, if any, conversation, because they know what they're supposed to do. This is merely walking through it, and that doesn't require a conversation for that.
But it is possible to just play singles and not doubles, right?
Correct. This is
Okay.
only singles, correct.
So then
Two
you can-
people on the court during play.
So you could resubmit the plan for just 3 people.
Pardon me?
You could resubmit the plan for 3 people, not 5. you don't have to
I
do
thought
doubles.
about that, but I didn't want to jump too much because I'm having so much difficulty with 2. I try to introduce 3, it makes it that much more difficult. Well, I can do it, I think I can do it, but I try to keep my mind not doing it right now.
Okay, Secretary Lear?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, I think you've done a good job of putting this all together, and I would, wondering if Chris Herring, you know, maybe could kind of take a look at it, you know?
There's 3 more concerns, excuse me, ma'am, but there are 3 more concerns I was going to review very quickly. But this is the most difficult one to explain. That's the reason I wanted to mention it first. I need to address those other concerns so it's a clear air of what's going on. If I may do that. If there's any other questions though, because this is
No, why
they're
don't
all
you present your
important,
other
but this
3?
is the most difficult.
Yeah, why don't you present your other 3, and then we'll let Chris
Okay,
Herring.
all right. So we'll move back again to the first page. And the next one was acoustics, and that's what we were talking about just a minute ago. Okay, I plan to do it off court for the verbal part, demonstration on court, so that should take care of that concern right there. Next concern was sanitation of the waiting area remains a concern with multiple persons present in its confines. Well, at that time, I may not have been clear. I said if there's a problem with that, we'll only allow 2 people in the waiting area. Now, the waiting area is 5 deep, 20 wide. That's plenty of room for people's equipment and 2 people. So there, again, I don't see there being a problem. It's just someone maybe have any other, okay. Last but not least is the first thing I said during starting my presentation. And the concern is if they allow us, they must allow racquetball. Since we play on the same course, they could say they're going to have 2 people just like us.
Sir?
Just because they gave it to us, they feel they have to give it to them. But I don't feel that's true because there's a major difference between the 2. I mean, we use the same rackets, we use different balls, and the rules are similar, but because of they may be able to do it. I don't want to try again because I used to play racquetball. I haven't played for a while now, so I don't want to say it can be done or it can't. So I feel that's not also a legitimate concern. So if someone else has some questions, I'd be more than happy to speak about it.
Actually, let's hear from Chris Herring.
Okay, let me get this out of your way.
President Wilson, Board of Directors, Mr. Steiner, Myrna DeBruin, the club's charter club supervisor, and myself met with Mr. Steiner on the courts. Part of that process was to become more familiar with the whisper ball activity, as I was not as aware of how that participation occurred, and then to see how that modification was being made with respect to the restrictions that we have in place. In that conversation, a couple things. As Mr. Steiner presented today, he had a change in the rule set in order to do that activity. And I know Mr. Steiner is passionate about whisper ball, and he is confident that they're able to modify the rule set and play in a manner that would keep 6 feet distancing. I don't have the same confidence that Mr. Steiner has, that the modified play is to the extent that it would be difficult at best to ensure that happened continuously throughout play. But also, as we discussed with Mr. Steiner, the ability to keep a 6 feet distance even within ourselves on the court as we had our conversation. The acoustics there were very difficult. It's an indoor area that's not made for having a verbal conversation. And so that precluded him or precipitated him stepping into space within 6 feet. What that told me was when we go to do training, likely that opportunity will present itself again where the acoustics are difficult, and keeping the 6 feet distance will again be difficult as well throughout that, because it was demonstrated when we met. And with the extreme change in the rule sets to play, it will take an amount of communication in order to have that activity be done in the manner that they wanted to modify it at. And so those were significant reasons why we decided not to approve that. Yes, we were concerned about the optics of having multiple players on a court that we restrict to single players for another activity. And so for those reasons, we chose not to approve it at this time.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Director McAdam.
So a question I'd like to have some clarification on, because I see what's happening in the state of Arizona, and I just don't know how to bring these two things together. That allegedly the Arizona Department of Health wouldn't allow for whisper ball or racquetball to be played, but they allow for ice hockey to be played, which is, designed to be a contact sport right from the get-go. So I'm just trying to figure out, what are the regulations governing the rest of Arizona that allow that to happen, that are more restrictive for us?
I don't know those differences. What I can tell you is, like, when we do a review of an activity, let's say racquetball, and I'll go to whistle ball afterwards, that's an activity where you're not able to control that. The ball goes in many different directions. And at any given time, in an enclosed indoor space, you're not able to ensure a 6 feet distancing, or even that there isn't any contact between players during that play.
Right, but my point remains that all across the state of Arizona, sports that we know are not going to observe a 6 foot limiting are taking place with apparently with the full approval of the Arizona Department of Health. And that's what I'm just trying to figure that out. How can that be that ice hockey, which meets all of those things that you don't know where the puck's going to go the same way you don't know where the ball is going to go, and why is it that those things are taking place apparently with the full acquiescence of the Arizona Department of Health, and yet not for us? I don't like an explanation.
I don't have an explanation on that one, but I can say that ice hockey isn't being played by 75 and 85-year-old individuals either.
It is being played by seniors. My husband plays, and he's 65 years old. So yeah. There are senior teams of ice hockey players. Yeah. So I guess to me, this is just something that we as human beings are designed to look for consistency and patterns. And as we look and see outside of Sun City things that are happening, we're looking for that pattern to continue. And I'm just befuddled by the fact that there seems to be such an enormous inconsistency. And I guess I'm just looking for answers there. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. I would suggest that, Richard, you meet with Chris Herring again, if that's something, when you're talking about changing your plan. Again, you can talk to Chris. That's where our opening up is. We are following ADHS as well as CDC, and we are a private organization. And so obviously with our population, they have to make decisions based on what they feel is the best. So my only suggestion to you here is Chris Herring is the one that you need to meet with.
Okay. Other comments? No.
Any other member comments? I cannot hear you, sir.
If I may speak a minute, please. Well, he's saying I'm making big changes. These
You went
aren't
from
big
5
changes.
down to 3, correct?
I'm sorry?
You went from 5 down to 3.
No, it's still two players on the court during play. So that doesn't change for singles. What changes for singles, but the people play singles also play doubles. Now, if you play doubles and you play singles and you change to play singles and you follow what I'm saying, it's as if you're playing doubles. The positions are the same when you're playing doubles as what I'm saying to use for playing singles.
Okay.
And I'm saying this because to prohibit people occasional distancing less than 6 feet. And as you probably observed, as we approach the podium here, many of us are passing within 6 feet of another person, even though it's occasional. And during this sport, I'm trying not even to do that. And most of the passing by is occasional. So that's just going to happen. I think that's a little bit what this Ms. McAdam was speaking a little bit about. It's permitted, and it's permitted here. It's permitted in a grocery store when we're passing. It's occasional. In a sport, it's occasional. It's not a person stands beside each other for a long length of time, because it's all occasional. You're constantly moving. But I'm trying to prohibit even that to satisfy any concerns that we're within 6 feet. So I'm using the same parameters for singles as I did for doubles. Doubles, that's the positions you play. You must play that position in order to hit the ball within where you want to hit it. What a big change was down the center. Well, that's really not a big change because 95% of the balls that's hit on the floor go to the sidewalls, not down the center. Yeah. Even though I am prohibiting that area. Because that's the most, I'm sorry.
Okay, I do understand what you're saying.
Well, I want to make sure everybody as well as.
Again, the person you need to talk with is Chris Herring, because there's not a time for a motion or anything here at this time, so this is not productive. You need to talk to Chris Herring and go over how you are resubmitting it, and would be our final on that one.
So the recourse isn't through you all then, I understand, correct? Okay, I misunderstood that. I thought that might be a situation. My apologies. Thank you.
Madam Chair, board members, I have one very brief comment and question. This is
number.
Yes.
Patrick Gannon, 1500056, and this is regarding volunteers for board committees. And my question, Madam Chair, for whomever may answer this on staff or on the board, is there a timetable for volunteer committee members to participate in committee meetings via Zoom or some other similar platform that the RCSC may adopt?
Right now, as far as being in a committee, Zoom, we have not done that with any committees. Maybe you have with your long-range planning, but we haven't done that. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, but at this point in time, it hasn't, other than long-range planning.
Okay, then I would urge the board to make this way of participating available. I've worked with large nonprofits and small nonprofits, boards and committees. It's an everyday occurrence, and I think we could get more participation by membership if we had the availability, and you just need a laptop and a membership. So it's not a hugely expensive item, and I think it would help more participation. I look forward to hearing a motion or something from the board on that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Constance Sherman, 127101. In the interest of transparency, I also feel the way he does, that the committees should be allowed to have a few members view and see what you're talking about. We can do that on video, but it lets us know as members of the community that maybe things aren't quite so closed, that at least 4 or 5 of us could sit there and listen to what you're doing. Of course, I understand we would not be able to speak unless we're recognized by the chair. So that's my suggestion, is that once you start doing your COVID opening up procedure, maybe some of these committees could have 3 to 5 members also sit and listen and participate. Okay? Because I know I've had questions about money issues, per se. You know, everybody does here. And I don't know where to get any answers, and I can't participate, and I can't go to the finance committee meeting. So some of the things I've been wondering about is COVID expenses. You know, what has everybody spent on COVID expenses? What has the income been from federal or state government? What income are we receiving to address these costs? Also, there's the non-hiring of performers and vendors and bands and all that kind of stuff that's been kind of closed for a year. Where's that money going, and how much is it? So that's my concerns.
Actually, Connie, if you go on the YouTube channel, the RCSC YouTube channel, all of our committee meetings are posted there.
Right, I know, I watch a lot of them, trust me, I watch a lot.
In the finance meeting, they did talk about the COVID and how much the cost for the PPE was.
Okay, did they talk about the income coming in for those, to meet those costs?
We talked about some income, but obviously we're restricted as to what we have coming in right now. Jan?
Okay.
Madam President, Board of Directors, Mr. Chairman, we did not get any income from the state or federal.
Right.
The income during that time, luckily people decided if they couldn't do anything else, they'd golf. And that increased our income a great deal in that department from what was budgeted. And luckily that covered a lot of our COVID expense. Director of Finance, Bill Cook, might be able to tell you off the top of his head what the COVID expenses were in total for 2020, but I cannot tell you. You can either. Yeah, sorry, we're not, but we'd be glad to get that. And you can always come to Mr. Cook or myself down at the corporate office, and we'd be happy to share with you. What was your third thing?
Connie.
There were 3. Oh, well, interestingly enough, the only savings, because there's really no savings as far as our concert series, because we charge basically what it costs us to put them on. But the savings of not putting on the Sun Bowl shows has helped us to be able to afford to keep our employees paid through this time instead of them going without work and without pay, because obviously then they wouldn't be here when we needed them again. So that's pretty much what has happened there.
Okay, thank you, Jan. Okay, any other member comments? Okay, at this time, I'll open it up for board comments. Director McAdams?
So believe it or not, I think I have something that's completely non-controversial and actually a really good piece of good news. So I know it's late, so I'm just going to read this quickly for you. As tax season is upon us, I would like to point out in my capacity as board liaison for 2 wonderful organizations in Sun City, a tax strategy that our cardholders may not be aware of, but you really need to be, which allows our residents to redirect their tax dollars to these worthy causes in our community. So both SHOA, the Sun City Homeowners Association, and Sun City CAN, the Community Assistance Network, are formally identified in the state of Arizona as qualified charitable organizations. This means that if you owe Arizona state tax, you may make a charitable donation to organizations, these 2 or similar ones, and you receive a dollar-for-dollar tax credit. So this is better than a deduction, a tax credit, up to $400 for single taxpayers and up to $800 for married taxpayers. In other words, you can give to a charity like SHOA or CAN Or you can give to the state of Arizona. It's kind of a no-brainer. Your gift is returned to you by the state of Arizona and costs you nothing. While all of us are likely aware of the good work of SHOA, and you can get the necessary tax information from their emails or by calling their office, or I have some things right here for afterwards, Sun City CAN is a bit smaller and less well-known, at least it was to me. With just 2 part-time employees and its volunteer team, CAN connects needy residents with available resources. CAN prepares and e-files for free almost 2,000 federal and state tax returns each year for people who need help. It helps low-income people get property tax refunds. It helps pay overdue electric bills for low-income residents through the APS Crisis Assistance Program. It helps people with Medicare issues, partners with Habitat for Humanity to paint low-income houses, provides assistance in the form of dial-a-ride vouchers, and more. If you're interested in knowing more, if you don't already use this tax strategy, you can either contact SHOA or Sun City CAN directly. I have their information here, or see me afterwards for further information. Arizona residents are permitted to donate to several tax credit opportunities every year. Thank you.
Okay. Treasurer Rooney?
Thank you. This will be brief. We are forming a new committee. It's the tech.
Yeah, move it.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Uh-oh.
There.
What's funny about this is I'm going to talk about technology, so that was a good one. I didn't do it on purpose either. Several of you have talked about what we're going to do here with meetings and, like Zoom and all that kind of stuff. And it actually kind of segues into what I'm going to talk about. We are going to create a new technology committee. Information technology. How do we stay current? How do we get current? How do we keep current in the future? How do we attract younger generations in here? We have to be at the forefront of technology. And by that, we're talking about, expanding Wi-Fi services to all of our rec centers, and e-gaming and e-sports and Zoom meetings and all these things that we need to be able to use our current systems for and adapt to them and stay current and continue to adapt. So we are trying to form a committee. We are looking for qualified people for this committee. And some of the qualifications, we really need you to have, because we need to be able to put together ideas and recommendations to push forward on some of these things, or, data management and information about, you experience and have knowledge on Wi-Fi and cloud and data retention and collecting information and researching. We have to get ourselves positioned for the future now. We're already kind of behind the times as it is. So if you have really good IT qualifications, you feel that you could participate, or someone else who is on our community that could, please contact our corporate headquarters, our corporate office, and sign up for this committee. We could really use your expertise to create ideas for our future, for technology. Vice President Egge, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, I think you've covered it.
Okay, great. Anybody else questions? Thank you. Sorry.
Anyone? And other board comments? Okay, seeing none. The next meeting is March 25th, 2021, here in the Sundial Auditorium at 9:00 a.m. I need a motion to adjourn.
I do.
Treasurer Rooney, second. Vice President Egge, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting closed.
Copywritten production of the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated and is intended for the sole purpose of informing our Recreation Center members. Any duplication, copying, transmission, broadcast or use, including electronic and social media, is strictly prohibited without the prior written consent from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated. Thank you for watching.